What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and the news keeps flowing and the stories keep coming, so let's get into these. From the act man platforming someone fans call a hateful bigot that wants to cleanse the world of ethnic groups because of his political opinions, to the fallout of that Nerdrotic story that has now brought in other people talking about this, and it just kinda shows how divided this entire online space really is. There's a lot to go over, so let's get into it. Firstly, the Act Man. I spoke about him around 2 weeks ago where he was suddenly against cancel culture and dogpiling others once the canceling started to come for the left-leaning side of the political angle. In case you forgot, the whole canceling of woke leftists started to happen promptly after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. And a bunch of people from high-ranking officials to ordinary workers started tweeting or posting comments on social media saying that the next shooter better not miss. This led to myriads of people getting called out, fired, or running damage control in order to protect their livelihoods. Because stating that you want a presidential candidate to be offed because you don't agree with them politically is definitely a horrible thing to say. It doesn't matter which side or who it is, it's just not a smart thing to say out loud. Naturally, this led to a lot of people effing around and finding out. And the Act Man showed disdain for that cancel culture mentality coming for the other side after conservatives were ravaged by the same mentality and policies for years. Now the Act Man is getting torn apart by his own fans for the exact reasons I always say will happen, which is that woke activists and weirdos will always devour others the moment they step out of line. So what the hell happened? Well, the Act Man is a fan of Halo, and he teased that he's talking to Marty O'Donnell soon, who, in case you don't know, was the guy who composed all the original Halo music, the iconic music you likely know from the series. Yeah, that's Marty. He was also involved with Destiny. He created a lot of music for that too until Bungie and him parted ways. Of course, talking to Marty is a big no-no, you see, because Marty is a conservative man. He's actually running in the political race to become a member of Congress, and yeah, he's running as a Republican too. Which means, since he's not liberal, that now somehow diminishes everything Marty has ever done, and he is now the devil. He even has a website, which is martyo'donnell.com, where people can donate to his campaign, and if you go look through the about part, Marty kinda says it plainly what he advocates for when it comes to his politics and beliefs. Here's what Marty said via his own website, and I quote, "We have a government pushing the wrong priorities and a culture that mocks the beliefs, the values, and the people who built this country. Most Americans aren't afraid to work to provide for their families. Values like self-sacrifice, faith, integrity, fidelity, and valor are simply part of who we are. We live these values not because the government tells us to, but because we know it's the right thing to do. Moral obligations are freely chosen, not mandated by government. Our sad reality is that many children in our country are suffering. Years of ridiculing and demeaning family values have taken a toll. Our society's strength, fundamentally linked to the vitality of the family structure, has been eroded, and children are the casualties. We can ensure our children get the best start in life, follow the science as my liberal friends say, by supporting two-parent and kinship households that help love and nurture them. They'll likely be healthier individuals, better parents themselves, and better members of society as adults. I will champion the family as critical for children's development and success. My approach, however, is inclusive, recognizing all who step up to provide for their children, because it doesn't take a village to raise a child, it takes a family, and it takes families to make a village." End quote. So as you can see, one of Marty's big pushes for his campaign is ensuring that the nuclear family, so to speak, comes back and becomes the norm again. It's clear that Marty had to word himself differently not to spark outrage, but we know what he's talking about. He's trying to say that the way that the world has been going these past 10 plus years has pretty much been done to dismantle and ruin the family unit. Because if people are not a part of a strong family, they are more easily controlled and radicalized by propaganda. This ultimately is why so many people these days believe and endorse things like wokeness, because 9 times out of 10 the people the mind virus preys on are the most vulnerable and disenfranchised of society. People who have nothing to lose and have been taught by the schools and others like them, which is government mandated of course, that they are victims all the time. and that the family unit is sacrilegious now and instead you must eat the bugs, live in the pod, all of that nonsense. These victims have no one to turn to, so they turn to government-funded institutions which over time warp them into believing fallacies, and then they become radical leftist freaks. Look at any riot that's happened in the past 10 years and who gets arrested, you'll see dead, soulless-eyed people with colorful hair, piercings all over, and they all look like they hate themselves. That is what Marty is talking about, but he can't word it like that, otherwise liberals will lose their minds. But I don't care if liberals get mad, so I'll just tell you how it is from the get-go. He's trying to use his influence to steer society back from the edge of oblivion, but since he's a Republican, this means that he's the devil. And since the Act Man is kind of platforming Marty in a way, this means that he too is the devil and must be cancelled as well. And this is what I always say, which is that the left always eats itself alive. They will devour their own if it means they get a leg up in the virtue hierarchy in any way. The comments that have come out of this range from stupid to insane. Besides this one comment where one user actually has common sense, here's what they said. I honestly don't give a flying F about Marty's political opinions. This is America. He can believe what he wants. I don't have to share the exact same set of beliefs as someone for me to enjoy their art and work. Some of y'all are cringe, acting like boomers. To which the Act Man replied, I tend to view people as more than the sum of their political beliefs, tends to keep friendships and relationships healthy. Well, that isn't exactly true since the Act Man did attack Az from heel vs. Babyface over political opinions. But like always, when you try to be more centrist and not left or right, the freaks do come out of the woods trying to find their blood. Some users replied to Act Man platforming a Republican man by saying, Marty has done some amazing music, but his political views are straight up trash. Another said, bro, F Marty, I don't want to hear his BS. The comments get worse, as I'll show in a bit, but this is what I mean. If Marty was liberal, they would love him. They simply hate the guy because he doesn't agree politically in a liberal sense. The very kinds of people Marty wants to save are those sorts of individuals, many whom are, like I said, being raised by the government and the internet and propaganda more so than their own parents these days. Another user would go scorched earth saying, oh yes, Marty, the guy advocating for the genocide of Palestinians and offhandedly called Joe Staten racist, because he participated in a campaign to raise money for Kamala Harris. Don't forget his entire stance when he tried to run for Congress was just, I made Halo music. As always, things get political almost immediately. The nuclear sludge that is the Palestine-Israel war is something that I largely want to avoid, because I don't want to claim that I'm somehow an expert on anything when it comes to that, because I'm not. And while I'm not saying supporting Marty is good or bad based on that, it kind of proves how divided this society is. Also saying that Marty is bad because he was against another former Bungie dev whose name is Joe Staten, who you likely know him if you're a big Halo or Destiny fan. He was also brought back by Microsoft to steer Halo Infinite in the right direction when it was clearly struggling. Anyway, that Joe guy supports Kamala Harris because that's his right to do so. Of course, because Joe is openly liberal, this means that he's a good guy in the eyes of certain groups. This also means if Marty disagrees with Joe on something, that Marty is bad because Republicans are evil, apparently. The nuclear backlash that intensifies as an election draws ever closer is insufferable in my opinion. I hate elections. It just brings out the worst in everybody. Everyone gets very defensive and hateful, and you'll see the closer we get to the end of this election, the more insane everything is going to get. And people have clearly drawn their lines in the sand and are spewing hate at each other constantly, but this is what I've been saying. These people will eat each other whole when they dare have their own opinions. It's crazy, dude. One user would say that Marty is the last person who should be talked to when it comes to Bungie's layoffs, to which another would say, like seriously, he was fired because he was problematic. Interview an actual dev who was laid off. Marty was let go because of a combination of things. For people who actually know why Marty was let go from Bungie, he was gone because he was having internal tensions over the music and overall direction of Bungie, a company he had a stern hand in founding himself. He would eventually go into a legal battle with Bungie back in 2015, apparently when Marty was fired over his beliefs and views of how Bungie should operate. He was also stripped of his stocks that he had within Bungie, and then he was thrown out the door by other members of the company. The other big issue was that Marty wasn't allowed to be involved with Bungie's future plans when it came to profits, and like I said, Marty took Bungie to court and won, and he gained all of his shares back because what they did was unlawful and shady as hell. He's since moved on. Bungie, of course, is in shambles right now since plenty of people are being let go, and there's tons of reports that Bungie manipulated the selling of the company to Sony for more money than it was worth, and they lied about what they could deliver to Sony in a realistic sense. And this whole Act Man Marty O'Donnell cancel culture story swings into another story too from that Park Place titled, multiple woke activists and Sweet Baby Inc. defenders laid off as part of Bungie's massive downsizing. Like this one former Bungie dev named Robert who said, after nearly 5 years delivering seasonal story from Hunt all the way to Deep and sending home the most well-received expansion in our history in final shape, I have been laid off and today is my last day at Bungie. What a long, strange trip it's been. Robert was also shown to be someone who explicitly made it their mission to represent their bisexuality in Destiny once they joined the company, they said via Twitter. When I was young, questioning my sexuality and not quite understanding who I was, I had a lot of people speculating, is he gay, or other way less friendly slurs. I didn't know the answer to that because I didn't know what bisexuality was when I was a teenager. I was confused by myself because I didn't have any proper education, and once I knew what bisexuality was, I didn't really know what it meant because I lived in a rural part of the US. Had never knowingly met another bi person and couldn't find representation of them in media. Back when I joined Bungie, I also felt Saint 14 and Osiris were romantically involved because as a queer man, their romance made sense to me. I learned my interpretation was in fact correct when I became a narrative designer for the company, and I was overjoyed. I've been writing Saint and Osiris as gay since I started working at Bungie because that's who they were before. They are private and nuanced characters. There was never a space in which to unequivocally state their identities, but nuanced is lost in an age of queerbaiting. So it's clear that 2 of Destiny's cast in Osiris and Saint were made bisexual because Robert wanted to see his personality and views represented in the game, so he made it so. And I always found the relationship between Osiris and Saint to be completely out of left field. As a once avid player of Destiny, I never got the notion that Saint 14 or Osiris were bisexual at all. They were always too busy saving the world from time paradoxes when I was playing it. Not to mention Saint was dead, is also a robot, and then came back to life through time travel gobbledygook. The point is when I saw them holding hands in the pre-Lightfall cinematic, I let out the biggest what the hell in a while, because it felt completely out of left field, like since when were this old guy and a robot banging? And for a while now, Bungie has been interlaced with identity politics from the Destiny game themselves as they further confirmed that other characters' sexual identities, as if that mattered at all in terms of gameplay. Spoilers, it doesn't. Like, did you know that the Taken King Oryx was originally a woman and became a man through sheer force of will? So yes, technically Oryx is a trans villain in Destiny. Does this matter at all to the story in any important way, or was that just stated for representation reasons? The answer is yes, by the way. Most players of live service games, they don't even care much about the story beats, they just want to play and shoot stuff. But Bungie had clearly become an identity politically driven agenda company, so it's no surprise after Marty had been fired that tons of activists were hired, which is exactly what Marty was warning Bungie's higher-ups of from the beginning. Another activist got fired who said in the past, "It's always shocking to see the intense hatred, jealousy, and viciousness in the shitty parts of online gaming culture when it rears its head. I will assume anyone who's mad at Sweet Baby Inc. right now is a murderous white supremacist." And big surprise, what ended up happening to Bungie is that they went woke, and they literally went broke in every sense. They are now having mass layoffs, and each expansion year over year is losing more money and players. So pretty much everything that Marty was saying about Bungie not being the Bungie you remembered, it ended up being true. And the identity politics he stood against took over, and look what has happened. If you ask me, like that one user earlier who said, "Why ask Marty about the layoffs?" Well, there's really no better person to ask. The guy literally lived through the Chimera-esque transformation of Bungie in real time as the once-based pro-American developer got infiltrated and infected with woke communist freaks, and look what's happened to them now. The entire studio is bleeding money, talent, and goodwill, and now that people want to cancel the Act Man for speaking to him, it kinda just proves Marty's point further. That these online circles only want certain kinds of people to be able to voice their opinions as long as they agree with them in every single way. Then another user replied to Act-Man platforming Marty by saying, "What an incredibly privileged thing to say. They claim in the comments that Marty O'Donnell apparently advocates for Project 2025, which is being considered this ultra right-wing movement that will destroy liberals or something in the future." But as far as I could see, there is no evidence of Marty supporting this. The only evidence people claim is that he's a Republican, which means that he is somehow intrinsically aligned with it. And they of course keep spewing the whole Palestine-Israel war agenda. And looking it up, yeah, Marty has said that eliminating Israel is a bad idea and Palestine would be better off with a two-state solution. As you can see here, Marty gets heated with people, and yeah, this is all one big nuclear no thanks all around from me. Again, like I said, I'm not defending Marty here, nor am I siding with any political angle when it comes to that war. I have no skin in that game or claim to it, but what I am saying is that for the Act-Man to pretend that cancel culture was good when it only affected the conservatives, and then having that same cancel culture come for him not once but twice now because he decided to platform a guy who made music for a beloved series and has political opinions others clearly don't agree with, it kind of proves the ultimate goal here, which is that nothing you say or do when it comes to any of these politically charged topics will go over well any which way. Do I agree with Marty when it comes to Bungie getting destroyed from the inside out when it comes to wokeness? Yeah, I mean, he's right. Bungie was destroyed. But at the same time, when it comes to ongoing wars, he has chosen his side and now everything has gone tits up for Act-Man because now him simply talking to Marty about Bungie and Halo pulls him into this entire other conversation that has nothing to do with what they're likely talking about. And this is the core problem of all of this. Whether you agree or disagree with Marty or the Act-Man for his choice to platform the guy, the point here is that clearly people cannot separate anything from anyone anymore. It's just one big mess that has no clear-cut answer. If you talk to Marty about Halo music, you're also pro somehow one side of a war that you have nothing to do with. But if you reject him, that now means that you're pro the other side of a war that you have nothing to do with. You can't even talk to people anymore without someone somewhere pulling in every single conceivable thing they've said or done into the context anymore. Do I agree with Marty over the war? I don't really care either way. I don't want to tell any of you how to think when it comes to those things because I am not the channel for that. But I do think if people who are pro-leftist are allowed to speak, so too should pro-right-leaning people too. I say that it's up to the audience to decide, and I think the Act-Man is learning in real time what happens when the shoe is on the other foot. If the Act-Man was talking to a composer who was liberal or pro-Palestine or whatever other opinion that is out there, it would cause another reaction. You just simply cannot win when it comes to these things, and people are not willing or able to separate the person from the art anymore. Like this user says, I love that the Act-Man is just interviewing a hardcore genocidal conservative bigot on his channel again. He knows everything Marty has been doing and actively is continuing to like him. What a great guy. Look, I'm not making this video to say that you should like or hate Marty or the Act-Man, but this is the absolute state of our world right now. You can't even have a civil conversation with people unless everybody agrees with everything to a T, which just seems crazy to me if anything else. Just because the Act-Man is speaking to Marty doesn't mean that he's pro any war side. Like, how does talking to the guy who made music for a shooting game mean that he's now pro some side of the war? You know what I mean? Can nobody have a conversation with anyone else in any way unless we all agree 100% on everything? If that's the case, what's the point of conversation then? I need people to realize that every person on this planet is not some drone that is 100% one side only on everything. That's not how real life works. And if you are only willing to talk to people who are one side or the other, that isn't good too. Because I would love to speak to some pro-woke identity political person in games, but they would likely never agree to it because their friends would see us talking and then think that we're somehow friends and aligned in every way. Like, people are so afraid of speaking to one another in fear of the backlash from their other so-called friends. It's amazing to me. Does the Act-Man talking to Marty about Halo make the Act-Man a terrible person? Or are people able to be adults about things and realize that maybe, just maybe, that you can speak to people even if you don't agree with them politically on everything? This is why I always say, if you can try to keep the super hardcore politics out of your daily life, it's a good idea. Because advocating or embracing any which side of whatever war that is going on and such, it will just cause people to be more divided when we should be coming together. But unfortunately, I don't see that changing anytime soon since, like I said, the election is coming in hot and there's far too many open wounds across people for civil discussion to be had. This then brings us to Nerdrotic. I spoke about this in my previous video where a viral tweet thread tried to expose Nerdrotic for being a awful grifter person, which has since resulted in the person who made that thread to lock their account and go protected multiple times over. And then they unprotected their account and then spewed more nonsense at Nerdrotic. It's a messy situation. Not as messy as Actman's currently, but messy nonetheless. Then another user named Cosmonaut Marcus, who I actually think makes some decent videos. I mean, I haven't watched his stuff in years myself, but back in the day, before I did YouTube, I remember seeing a few of his videos on like Spiderman or other superhero movies. But the general consensus I got from his videos was he would take a movie, pick it apart, and speak about it and give his opinion. Anyways, he decided to chime in on Nerdrotic and said, Nerdrotic is a pathetic grifter. Just another sewer person who doesn't actually believe anything and farms outrage for money. And this is kind of where I sighed and went, oh boy, here we go again. Nerdrotic is not a grifter. The guy just covers pop culture, and I would honestly say that what Nerdrotic covers is similar in a way to what Cosmonaut Marcus does too. Sure, it's two different ways of approaching it, but both content creators pick apart movies and discuss them. So if Cosmonaut Marcus is calling Nerdrotic a grifter, wouldn't that just mean that he too is a grifter? But of course he wouldn't see it that way because Cosmo just talks about the movie, right? But that's exactly what Nerdrotic does as well. It's just two different content creators with their own styles critiquing the same kind of media but in their own way. It's kind of ridiculous for Cosmonaut Marcus to say this when he has built a following in a similar fashion picking apart movies too. I think maybe Cosmonaut Marcus would disagree with this and say he doesn't indulge in what he would call the hateful bigots of the community. But that's just disingenuous since I don't consider Nerdrotic's community to be bigoted since based on my analytics, the same kinds of people who watch him watch me too. It's not bigoted to say that largely speaking that many movies today are not as good as before or the TV shows either. It's not bigoted or right-wing leading to say that media today has political slants or built-in messaging to push narratives because they do. And when you're met with dozens of examples by people like Nerdrotic or others, you just close your eyes and you all conveniently ignore them and you just act like they're not there. Like how that one Transformers show who was pushing non-binary ideologies onto kids, you'll probably say that it's fine, but it isn't. It's there to confuse kids who are impressionable. How many kids programs these days push identity politics? Almost all of them, I would say, because it's easier to indoctrinate and control kids than adults. And as someone looked you in the eye and said that Marvel movies post-Endgame had no agenda pushing predominantly female heroes and ruining male ones, they'd be lying to you too. I think that Deadpool and Wolverine literally makes fun of the fact that post-Endgame movies are not as good, like be serious. But I think what the Nerdrotic cancellation attempt that has ignited on the internet means more than anything else, is that the people who oppose the content that critiques and offers a different outlook on things, they're just scared of it. I genuinely believe because of Nerdrotic, Critical Drinker, and more, that it's why so many things have changed. I know it sounds crazy, but I think movies like Deadpool and Wolverine are a direct response in a way to content made by people like him. Sort of like Twitter being bought by Elon Musk is a big reason why free speech is so much more prevalent across every other platform right now. I think people rising up and saying what they think is changing things for the better. Of course, cancel culture will never end. It will always lurk in the shadows like a wounded animal, but it's important that we speak about things even if it's with people we don't agree with 100% on everything. What's happening to the Actman and Nerdrotic is proof enough that the world is more divided than ever before. But I also have more hope that we can change things in a positive way as long as we don't give up and keep fighting. But what do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe, share, and like the video. Thanks to my patrons and members. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.